I have seen many winters, and I have seen many friends and loved ones bend under the weight of age. Some walk slower. Some hold their backs with every step. Some wince when they rise from a chair. And then there are a few who move as if time has forgotten them. They stand tall, their steps firm, their faces at peace. You may think they were just lucky, that their bodies were simply made differently. But I will tell you the truth, the real secret that so many overlook. It is not luck. It is not just genetics. It is a choice, a way of living, a way of treating the body and mind long before age comes knocking. I remember an old friend from my youth. We worked side by side for many years. His hands were as rough as mine. His back carried the same burdens. But as the years passed, I saw the difference. While I struggled with stiffness and aches, he moved with ease. His body did not betray him the way mine did. I had to know why. And so, I asked him one evening as we sat together watching the sun disappear beyond the hills. He smiled, took a deep breath, and told me something I have never forgotten. He said that pain in old age is not just something that happens. It is something we prepare for without even realizing it. Some invite it, while others keep it at bay. I listened carefully as he spoke. He told me about movement, how the body is like an old door. If you leave it untouched for too long, it stiffens. It creaks when you try to open it. But if you push it gently every day, if you let it swing freely, it stays strong. He walked every morning, not to get anywhere, not because someone told him to, but because his body needed it. Even on the days when it felt unnecessary, he did it. And while I sat more and more as the years went by, he kept moving. Then he told me about food. I used to eat whatever I pleased. If it filled my belly, that was good enough for me. But he was careful. He knew that food was more than just fuel. It was medicine or poison, depending on what you chose. While I reached for the easiest meals, he filled his plate with things that kept his body strong. Not once did I see him stuff himself full. He ate just enough and always made sure his plate had what his body needed. He was not a rich man, but he found a way to eat well. He also spoke of the mind. This part stayed with me the most. He said that pain is not just in the body. It grows in the mind first. The more we worry, the more we stress, the more pain finds a way in. He laughed every day. He found joy in the smallest things. While others let their troubles pile up like heavy stones on their backs, he let his go. He knew life was not meant to be carried like a burden. I thought about his words for a long time. At first, I dismissed them. I told myself that some people are just born lucky. But then I started watching. I paid attention to those who stayed strong and those who did not. And I saw it clearly. The ones who lived without pain were the ones who cared for their bodies before they had to. They did not wait for the aches to come before they started moving. They did not wait for sickness before they ate well. They did not let stress eat away at their strength. I wish I had learned this sooner. I would have taken better care of myself. But I share this with you now, so you do not make the same mistake. It is never too late to start. I began moving again, slowly at first. It was hard, but every day it got a little easier. I changed what I ate, not all at once, but bit by bit. And I learned to let go of things that were not worth my energy. And you know what? The pain did not own me anymore. It was still there, but it no longer controlled my life. So if you ever wonder why some people stay pain-free in old age while others do not, remember this. It is not a mystery. It is not magic. It is a choice made every single day. Move, even when you do not feel like it. Eat as if your body depends on it, because it does. And never let worry and stress settle in your bones. Do these things, and you will find yourself walking with strength while others struggle. And one day, someone younger will look at you and wonder how you did it. And you will smile, knowing that you learned the secret before it was too late. Now, let's clear some common questions. Is there a connection between social engagement, relationships, and physical well-being in old age? I have lived long enough to see people grow old in many different ways. Some seem to shrink into themselves, their shoulders slumped, their eyes filled with a quiet sadness. Others remain bright and full of life, their voices strong, their steps steady. When I was younger, I used to think it was just a matter of luck. Some people aged well, and others did not. But as the years passed and I watched more closely, I realized there was something else at play. It was not just about how much they moved or what they ate. It was about who they surrounded themselves with. Loneliness is a heavy burden, heavier than most people realize. I have seen it wear a person down faster than illness. It creeps in slowly at first, but before long, it settles into the bones, making every step feel heavier, every breath more difficult. A man who spends his days alone often finds that his body starts to betray him. His back aches more. His joints stiffen. His heart does not beat as strong as it once did. He may eat well and exercise, but if he has no one to share his days with, the weight of loneliness pulls him down in ways he cannot fight on his own. I remember an old friend who lived just down the road from me. He was once a lively man, always laughing, always telling stories. But after his wife passed, he withdrew from the world. At first, he said he just needed time. But as the months turned into years, he stopped visiting friends. He stopped joining us for meals. He stopped caring about the little things that once made him smile. His body followed the same path. His hands, once strong and steady, began to shake. His legs, once quick and sure, grew weak. And before long, he was barely the man I had once known. Then, there was another friend, a woman who had also lost her husband. But she made a different choice. She filled her days with people. She met with friends every morning. She played with her grandchildren. She never let herself sit in silence for too long. And despite her age, she remained strong. She had fewer aches, fewer complaints. When I asked her one day how she managed to keep going, she laughed and said, "I do not give myself time to fall apart." It took me many years to understand just how powerful connection is. The body and the mind are not separate things. They're tied together in ways most people fail to see. A person who laughs often, who shares stories, who feels the warmth of another's hand on their shoulder, carries less weight on their body. Their heart beats stronger, their muscles stay engaged, their steps remain steady. It is not just about happiness. It is about survival. Science has tried to explain this, and the truth is they have only confirmed what I have seen with my own eyes. People who stay socially connected live longer. They suffer less from diseases that weaken the body. Their minds stay sharp, their immune systems stay strong, and they recover from illness faster. I did not need studies to tell me this. I only needed to look around. But I know the argument some people make. They say that as they grow older, it becomes harder to stay connected. Friends move away, loved ones pass on, and the world does not slow down to wait for them. They feel left behind. I have seen this too. I have felt it myself. But the ones who stay strong are the ones who do not let this become an excuse. They find ways to stay engaged. They join groups, they reach out, they refuse to sit in silence, waiting for someone to come to them. They understand that connection is not something that happens to them. It is something they must create. I have learned that relationships are more than just companionship. They are a force that keeps the body alive. A person who has people to care for, even in the smallest ways, has a reason to keep moving. A grandmother who bakes cookies for her grandchildren will keep her hands steady for just a little longer. A man who walks to meet his friends at the park every morning will push through the stiffness in his legs because he knows someone is waiting for him. A woman who writes letters to her childhood friends will keep her mind sharp, her words clear, her heart full. There was a time in my life when I let myself drift into solitude. I thought I was doing fine. I still ate well, I still went for walks. But something was missing and I could feel it in my bones. The days felt heavier and the nights stretched longer. Then one day, an old friend knocked on my door. He did not say much, just invited me to sit with him for a while. I almost said no. I almost told him I was fine on my own. But something inside me pushed me to say yes. That small decision changed everything. I started meeting with friends again. I started making time for laughter. And slowly, I felt my strength return. My body, once heavy with loneliness, began to feel lighter. So if you ask me whether there's a connection between social engagement, relationships, and physical well-being in old age, I will not give you a complicated answer. I will tell you to look around. Find the ones who move with energy, who wake up each morning with purpose, who live without fear of pain holding them back. You will see that they are not the ones who sit alone. They are the ones who share their lives with others. They are the ones who let laughter fill their days, who hold on to friendships like lifelines, who refuse to let the world forget them. I will tell you this. If you want to stay strong as you grow older, take care of your body, yes. Eat well, move often, rest when you need to. But do not neglect the most powerful medicine of all. Stay connected. Reach out. Let yourself be part of something bigger than your own thoughts. And I promise you, when you do, you will feel it in your bones. A strength that does not fade. A lightness that does not dim. A life that does not just continue, but truly thrives. What surprising small habits do pain-free elders practice that most people overlook? I have watched people grow old in many different ways. Some seem to crumble under the weight of time, their bodies stiff, their faces lined with discomfort. Others move through the years with surprising ease, their back straight, their hands steady, their steps sure. For a long time, I thought it was just a matter of luck. Some people were simply blessed with stronger bodies. But as I paid closer attention, I began to notice patterns. It was not just about big decisions like diet or exercise. It was the small things, the little habits they practiced every single day that made the difference. These were not grand gestures, not things you would find in a doctor's office or a health magazine. They were quiet, almost invisible, and yet they kept pain at bay in ways most people never realized. One of the first things I noticed was how they carried themselves. While others let their shoulders round and their backs hunch, these people stood tall. They were not forcing it, not stiff like someone trying too hard. It was natural. It was as if their bodies simply knew how to hold themselves. I asked an old friend about this once, a man well into his 80s who still walked without a cane. He told me he had never let himself collapse into his chair. Every time he sat, he did it with purpose. He did not slouch, did not sink into himself. Your body listens to you, he said. If you tell it to fold, it will fold. If you tell it to stand, it will stand. Then there was the way they breathed. I never thought much about breathing when I was younger. It just happened on its own. But the ones who stayed strong paid attention. They did not breathe shallow and quick like so many others. They took slow, deep breaths, filling their lungs completely, letting the air move through them. One woman told me she did this every morning before she even got out of bed. 5 deep breaths to wake up her body, to remind it that it was alive. It keeps everything moving, she said. Keeps the blood flowing, keeps the mind clear. Another thing I noticed was how they used their hands. Many people let their fingers stiffen over time. They stopped using them for small, careful tasks. But the ones who stayed pain-free never let their hands grow idle. They kneaded dough, they strung beads, they twisted the caps off jars instead of asking for help. One man I knew, a carpenter all his life, still carved tiny wooden birds every evening. If you stop using your hands, he told me, they forget how to work. They also never stopped stretching. Not in a forced, painful way, but in small, natural movements throughout the day. They reached up to the highest shelf instead of always grabbing a step stool. They bent down to tie their shoes instead of lifting their foot onto a chair. They turned their heads fully when looking around instead of just shifting their eyes. These little motions kept their joints from stiffening, kept their muscles from forgetting how to move. I noticed something else too. They drank water. More than most people, not just when they were thirsty, but throughout the day. One woman, who had barely a wrinkle on her face despite her years, told me she made it a rule. A sip every hour, she said. Not when I'm thirsty, before I'm thirsty. She believed it kept everything in her body working smoothly, from her joints to her skin to her digestion. I thought it was a simple thing, too simple to matter. But then I started doing it myself, and I noticed the difference. My headaches faded. My knees did not creak as much. They also paid attention to the ground beneath them. Most people walk without thinking. They stomp, they drag their feet, they let their steps grow heavy. But the ones who stayed light on their feet always seemed aware of where they were placing them. They walked as if the earth deserved respect. They lifted their feet fully with each step. They stayed balanced. One man, well into his 90s, still walked faster than men half his age. I asked him how he did it. He laughed and said, I never forgot how to dance. And then there was the way they treated pain itself. Most people, when they feel a small ache, ignore it until it becomes unbearable. But the ones who stayed pain-free listened. If their knees felt tight, they stretched them gently. If their back felt sore, they adjusted the way they sat. They did not push through pain. They worked with it. Pain is like a whisper, an old friend once told me. If you listen to it when it's quiet, you won't have to hear it scream later. And perhaps the most surprising habit of all, the one that most people overlook, was how they spoke to themselves. I noticed that the ones who stayed strong never said, "I'm getting too old for this." They never muttered, "My body is falling apart." They never spoke as if aging was a curse. Instead, they talked about what they could do, not what they could not. The body listens, one woman told me. If you tell it that it is weak, it will become weak. If you tell it that it is strong, it will try to be strong for you. I learned these things not from books, not from doctors, but from watching those who aged well. And when I started doing these things myself, I felt the difference. It was not an overnight change. It was not dramatic. But little by little, my body felt lighter. My steps felt steadier. My mornings felt easier. Most people think that staying pain-free requires big changes. They think they need intense exercise routines, strict diets, expensive treatments. But the truth is, it is the small things, the quiet things, the things that seem too simple to matter. Stand with purpose. Breathe deeply. Use your hands. Stretch in ways that feel natural. Drink water before you're thirsty. Walk with awareness. Listen to pain before it grows loud. Speak to yourself with kindness. These are the habits that keep a body young while the years pass by. If you ask me how to stay free of pain as you grow older, I will not tell you to chase after big solutions. I will tell you to start with the smallest things. The things that seem insignificant. The things that take no extra time, no extra effort, just a little awareness. Because in the end, it is not the grand gestures that keep us strong. It is the small choices we make every single day. If someone already experiences pain, what are the most effective strategies to regain mobility and reduce discomfort? I have known pain, the kind that creeps into your bones slowly, until one day you wake up and realize that something that was once easy has now become difficult. I have felt the stiffness in my joints, the aching in my back, the heaviness in my legs. And I have seen others go through the same struggle. Some let it take them, believing it is just a part of aging, something they must accept. Others fight it, searching for ways to keep moving, to keep living without being trapped by discomfort. I have learned that while pain may come, it does not have to take everything from you. There are ways to regain mobility, to lessen the aches, to move freely again. But it does not come from just one big solution. It comes from small choices made every single day. The first thing I learned is that movement is not the enemy of pain. It is the cure. When my body hurt, my first instinct was to rest, to stop moving so I would not feel the discomfort. But I learned the hard way that doing nothing only makes it worse. The body is like an old door. If you leave it shut for too long, it stiffens. The hinges become rusty, and soon, it will not open at all. The only way to keep it working is to use it. I started small. Slow walks around my home. Gentle stretches in the morning before I got out of bed. At first, it was uncomfortable. But day by day, my body remembered how to move. The stiffness loosened. The pain lessened. And I realized that movement was not what made me hurt. It was avoiding movement that had made things worse. Another thing I discovered was the power of heat and cold. When my knees ached, I used warmth. A warm towel, a hot bath, anything to let the muscles relax. When my joints swelled, I used cold. Ice wrapped in a cloth, pressed gently against the area. It was a simple thing, but it made a difference. The pain that once felt unbearable became manageable. I spoke to an old friend, a man who had worked with his hands his whole life. He told me he did the same thing. Cold calms the fire, he said. Heat softens the stiffness. It was something our ancestors knew, something that had been passed down through generations. And yet, so many people forget it. I also learned that what I put into my body mattered more than I had ever realized. I used to eat whatever was easy, whatever filled my belly. but I never thought about how food affected my pain. Then I started paying attention. I noticed that on days when I ate heavy, greasy meals, my body felt worse. My joints were stiffer. My back ached more. But when I ate lighter, when I filled my plate with foods that nourished rather than just satisfied, I felt the difference. More water, more fruits, more vegetables, fewer processed foods. It did not happen overnight, but slowly my body responded. The swelling eased. The stiffness softened. And I realized that food could be medicine or it could be poison. The choice was mine. Breathing was another thing I had never paid much attention to. It seemed so simple, something the body did on its own. But I noticed that when I was in pain, my breath was shallow. I held tension in my chest, in my stomach, without even realizing it. Then I started practicing deep breathing. Slow, steady breaths that filled my lungs completely. At first, it felt strange. But after a few minutes, my body felt lighter. The tension eased. My pain, though still present, felt less sharp. A woman I once knew, who had lived well past 100 years, had told me this secret. Breathe deep, she had said. Pain feeds on tightness. Loosen yourself, and it will lose its grip. One of the most surprising lessons I learned was about the way I spoke to myself. When the pain first came, I would mutter, I am getting too old for this. I would sigh and say, my body is falling apart. But then I noticed something. The more I said these things, the worse I felt. My steps grew heavier, my movements slower. So I changed my words. Instead of saying, I am too old, I told myself, I am learning to move again. Instead of saying, my body is breaking down, I told myself, my body is healing. It may sound foolish, but I swear it made a difference. The mind and body are not separate. They listen to each other. And when I started speaking as if I could get better, my body started to believe it. I also learned to pay attention to how I sat, how I stood, how I moved throughout the day. I used to slump in my chair, let my shoulders roll forward, let my head hang down. I did not think it mattered. But then I saw a man, older than me, who still moved with strength. He told me his secret. Never let yourself fold, he said. Hold yourself the way you want to feel. I started sitting taller. I started walking with more intention. And little by little, my body stopped feeling as heavy as weak. Another thing that helped me was keeping my hands busy. I used to think that pain was just about the big joints, the back, the knees, the hips. But I realized that even the smallest movements mattered. I started using my fingers more, rolling a small ball in my palm, squeezing a soft cloth, writing by hand instead of just sitting still. The more I used my hands, the more I felt the difference in my whole body. Perhaps the most important thing I learned was not to fight pain, but to work with it. Most people treat pain as the enemy. They push through it, ignore it, or try to mask it. But the ones who stayed strong were the ones who listened. When their body whispered, they adjusted. If their back felt tight, they stretched gently. If their knees felt weak, they moved carefully. They did not force themselves through agony. They found ways to work with their bodies, not against them. Pain does not have to be the end of movement. It does not have to take away the ability to live fully. It could be a teacher, a guide, a reminder that the body still wants to move, still wants to heal. The most effective way to regain mobility and reduce discomfort is not found in one single thing. It is found in the small choices, the quiet habits. Move even when it feels difficult. Breathe deeply. Use heat and cold as needed. Eat in a way that heals rather than harms. Speak to yourself with kindness. Hold your body with strength. And most of all, listen to what your body is telling you. It wants to move. It wants to heal. And if you give it the chance, it will. If you like today's discussion, don't forget to like the video. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to stay updated with every video we release. And yes, don't forget to share your experiences and thoughts in the comments. Every comment is special to us. Your feedback helps us improve further. We'll continue to meet you in every new video on this channel. So until next time, take care.